The champagne flute shattered against the marble floor like a promise breaking. Elena Vasquez watched the crystal fragments scatter across the polished surface of the Meridian Hotel's grand ballroom, each piece catching the light from the chandeliers overhead. Around her, Seattle's elite continued their polite conversations and practiced laughter, oblivious to the destruction at her feet. She had been holding that glass too tightly, her knuckles white with the effort of maintaining composure, while her entire world crumbled. Miss Vasquez. A hotel attendant appeared with practiced efficiency, already sweeping the shards into a dustpan. "Are you all right?" "Fine," she lied, the word tasting like ash. "Just clumsy." But Elena Vasquez was never clumsy. At 26, she had built her reputation on precision. Every contract negotiated with surgical accuracy, every business deal closed with the kind of ruthless efficiency that had earned her the nickname the Ice Queen in Seattle's competitive real estate market. Tonight, however, her carefully constructed armor was developing cracks. The letter in her purse felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. 3 lines of text that had arrived that morning, destroying everything she thought she knew about her father's death 5 years ago. The father she had spent half a decade mourning, grieving, and trying to honor through her relentless pursuit of success. He didn't die in that car accident. He was killed. And the man responsible is in this room tonight. Elena's dark eyes swept across the ballroom, studying faces she had known for years. Which one of these people, these trusted colleagues and friendly acquaintances, had murdered her father and let her believe it was an accident? Which one had attended his funeral, offering condolences while hiding the truth? "You look like you've seen a ghost." The voice came from directly behind her, low and rough like whiskey over gravel. Elena turned and her breath caught in her throat. The man standing there was tall, probably 6'2", with broad shoulders that filled his black tuxedo perfectly. His hair was dark, slightly longer than fashionable, and his eyes were the color of steel in winter. There was something dangerous about him, something that didn't quite fit with the polished crowd around them. "Excuse me?" she managed. "Been staring at this room like you're planning someone's funeral." He stepped closer, and she caught the scent of expensive cologne mixed with something else, something wilder. "I'm Damien Cross." The name hit her like ice water. Damien Cross. The reclusive tech mogul who had emerged from nowhere 3 years ago to build an empire that now rivaled Amazon. He was known for his brilliance, his ruthlessness, and his complete rejection of Seattle's social scene. What was he doing here? "Elena Vasquez," she said automatically, extending her hand. When his fingers closed around hers, she felt a jolt of electricity that had nothing to do with static. His skin was warm, calloused in a way that spoke of hands. That did more than sign contracts. There was a scar running along his knuckles that looked fresh. "I know who you are," he said, not releasing her hand. "The question is, what has you looking like you want to burn this place down?" Elena studied his face, searching for any sign of deception, any hint that he might be the man she was looking for. But his expression was unreadable, carved from stone except for those intense eyes that seemed to see right through her. "Bad champagne," she said finally. Damien's mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "The champagne here costs more per bottle than most people make in a week. It's not the drink that's got you rattled. You don't know anything about me. I know you've been standing in the same spot for 20 minutes, watching everyone in this room like you're trying to solve a puzzle. I know your hand has been shaking so badly you could barely hold that glass. And I know that whatever's got you spooked, it's not going away anytime soon." Elena pulled her hand free, suddenly aware that they had been touching far longer than appropriate. "Why do you care?" For a moment, something flickered across his face. Something raw and vulnerable that was gone so quickly she might have imagined. "It may be because I recognize the look of someone whose world just got turned upside down." Before Elena could respond, a new voice cut through the air like a blade. "Elena, darling."
"Oh, there you are."
She turned to see Richard Sterling, her business partner, and the closest thing she had to family since her father's death. He was approaching with his trademark politician's smile, but there was something in his eyes that made her stomach clench. Richard had been her father's best friend, his business partner, the man who had helped her build everything she had today. Richard had also been the one to identify her father's body after the accident. Richard. She forced herself to smile. I was just meeting Mr. Cross. Richard's expression shifted almost imperceptibly as he looked at Damien. Mr. Cross, I didn't expect to see you here tonight. Life is full of surprises, Damien replied, and Elena caught something in his tone that sounded almost like a warning. Indeed it is. Richard placed a possessive hand on Elena's arm. Elena, I need to speak with you. There's been a development with the Morrison project. Elena felt trapped between these two men, both of whom seemed to be carrying secrets that pressed against her skin like static before a storm. The letter in her purse seemed to burn hotter. Of course, she said. Mr. Cross, it was not finished, Damien interrupted, his eyes locked on Richard's face. Our conversation, I mean. There's still so much to discuss. The tension between the two men was thick enough to cut. Elena looked back and forth between them, her instincts screaming that there was something she was missing, something important. Perhaps later, Richard said smoothly. Elena and I have urgent business. I'm sure you do, Damien replied. Then he turned to Elena, and when he spoke, his voice was quiet enough that only she could hear. Be careful who you trust, Elena Vasquez. Sometimes the people closest to us are the ones with the most to hide. He walked away before she could respond, disappearing into the crowd like smoke. Elena watched him go, her heart pounding with a mixture of attraction and confusion. What an odd man, Richard said, his hand still on her arm. Come, we need to talk privately. As he led her toward the hotel's private conference rooms, Elena couldn't shake the feeling that her world was about to change again. The letter in. Her purse felt heavier with each step, and Damien Cross's warning echoed in her mind. Sometimes the people closest to us are the ones with the most to hide. She was about to discover just how true those words were. The conference room felt like a tomb. Elena stared at Richard across the mahogany table, her hands folded so tightly in her lap that her nails were cutting crescents into her palms. The letter lay between them like a loaded gun, its words still, echoing in the silence that had fallen after she had finally found the courage to show it to him. Richard's face had gone completely white. Where did you get this? His voice was barely above a whisper. Does it matter? Elena's throat felt raw. Is it true, Richard? Was my father murdered? For a long moment, Richard said nothing. He picked up the letter with trembling fingers, reading it again as if hoping the words would change. Conference room windows, Seattle's skyline glittered in the darkness, the city lights blurring through Elena's unshed tears. Elena, Richard began, then stopped. Started again. There are things you don't understand, things your father never wanted you to know. Then tell me. The words came out sharper than she intended. Tell me everything. Richard stood, walking to the window with his shoulders hunched like an old man. When Elena had first met him 15 years ago, he had seemed invincible, larger than life. Now he looked fragile, broken. Your father was involved in some dealings that went beyond legitimate business, he said finally. There was a development project, the Cascade Bay development. It was supposed to be luxury condos, but the investors wanted to cut corners, use substandard materials. Your father found out, threatened to expose them. Elena's heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. What investors? People with money? Serious money. The kind of people who don't let obstacles remain obstacles for very long. You're talking in riddles, Richard. I need names. He turned from the window, and Elena was shocked to see that there were tears streaming down his face. The lead investor was a shell company called Phoenix Holdings. But the real money, the real power behind it, came from someone else. Someone your father trusted. Who? Richard's mouth opened, but before he could answer, the conference room door burst open. 3 men in dark suits entered, moving with the fluid precision of predators. Elena recognized them immediately from newspaper photos and society pages. They were Thomas Morrison, Jonathan Hayes, and David Kim, 3 of Seattle's most powerful real estate developers. And they all looked like they wanted her dead. Richard, Thomas Morrison said in a voice like poisoned honey. We need to talk. Elena stood, her instincts screaming danger. This is a private meeting. Not anymore, sweetheart, Jonathan Hayes replied, his smile never reaching his cold eyes. Your little investigation has caused some people considerable concern. What investigation? Elena's mind raced. How did they know about the letter? David Kim pulled out his phone, showing her a series of photographs. Elena's blood turned to ice. They were pictures of her taken over the past few days. Going to her office, meeting with clients, walking home. Someone had been watching her. You've been asking questions, Kim said. Dangerous questions about things that should stay buried. Elena looked at Richard, hoping for support, for protection, for anything. Instead, she saw something that made her soul crack in half. Guilt. Richard, she whispered. I'm sorry, Elena. I'm so sorry. The betrayal hit her like a physical blow. Richard, the man who had been like a second father to her. Richard, who had helped her build her career, who had held her at her father's funeral, who had been her anchor in every storm. Richard, who had been lying to her for 5 years. You knew, she said, her voice barely audible. You knew they killed him. It wasn't supposed to happen like that. Richard's words tumbled over each other. We were just supposed to scare him, make him back down from the investigation. But Michael wouldn't listen. He kept pushing, kept digging. It was going to destroy all of us. Elena felt like she was drowning. You were part of it. The Phoenix Holdings deal were part of it. I had debts, Elena, gambling debts that would have ruined me. They offered me a way out, a chance to make enough money to pay everything off. Your father found out about the substandard materials, and he was going to expose us all. Thomas Morrison stepped forward, his presence filling the room like toxic smoke. Your father was an idealist, Ms. Vasquez. He didn't understand that sometimes compromises have to be made. When he refused to see reason, well, he shrugged. Accidents happen. You murdered him. Lena's voice was steady now, cold as winter rain. We resolved a problem, Hayes corrected. And now we have a new problem. You. Elena's mind was working frantically, cataloging exits, calculating distances. There were 3 of them plus Richard, and only one of her. The odds were not good. What do you want? She asked. Your silence, Morrison said. Forever. In exchange. We're prepared to make you very wealthy. Walk away from this, and you'll never have to work another day in your life. And if I refuse? Kim's smile was arctic. Then you'll end up like your father. Another tragic accident. Lena felt something snap inside her. Something that had been holding her together for 5 years. The grief, the anger, the betrayal. It all crystallized into a single, burning point of fury. Go to hell. Morrison sighed. I was hoping you'd be more reasonable than your father. He nodded to Hayes, who began moving toward Elena. But before he could reach her, the conference room door opened again. Damian Cross stepped inside, and everything changed. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Morrison, Hayes, and Kim all froze, their faces cycling through surprise, confusion, and then something that looked suspiciously like fear. Gentlemen, Damian said conversationally. I hope I'm not interrupting anything important, Cross Morrison spat. Are you doing here? I had a dinner appointment with Ms. Vasquez, Damian replied, though Elena was certain they had made no such arrangement. I was told I could find her here. His eyes found Elena's across the room, and she saw something there that made her breath catch. Not just concern, but recognition. As if he knew exactly what was happening, exactly what she had just learned. This is a private business meeting, Hayes said, but his voice had lost its earlier confidence. Is it Damian's gaze swept over? The 3 men with casual disdain. It looks more like intimidation to me, possibly extortion. It's maybe even conspiracy to commit murder. The silence that followed was deafening. Morrison's face flushed red. You have no idea what you're talking about, don't I? Damian pulled out his own phone, holding it up so everyone could see the screen. It was recording. I've been listening. From the hallway for the past 5 minutes. Very illuminating conversation. I'm sure the FBI will find it fascinating. Lena realized she was holding her breath. How had Damian known to come here? How had he known she was in danger? You're making a mistake, Cross, Kim said quietly. A very expensive mistake. The only mistake, Damian replied, was thinking you could get away with murdering Michael Vasquez. Elena's knees nearly buckled. He knew, somehow impossibly. Damien Cross knew about her father. Rayson, Hayes, and Kim exchanged glances, some silent communication passing between them. Then Morrison smiled, and Elena felt her blood freeze. You know what, Cross, you're right. We did kill Michael Vasquez, and we're going to kill his daughter too, and there's not a damn thing you can do about it. What happened next was a blur of violence and chaos. Hayes lunged toward Elena, while Kim went for Damien. Morrison pulled out a gun. But Damien moved like liquid lightning, intercepting Kim with a brutal efficiency that spoke of military training. Elena threw herself sideways as Hayes reached for her, crashing into the conference table. The gunshot was deafening in the enclosed space. Elena looked up to see Damien standing over Kim's unconscious body, his face a mask of cold fury. Hayes was on the ground, groaning and holding his arm. Morrison was backing toward the door, his gun still smoking, his shot having gone wide. "This isn't over," Morrison snarled. "You have no idea what you've just started." He fled, leaving Hayes and Kim behind. Richard had pressed himself against the wall, his face gray with shock. Damien turned to Elena, and she saw that there was blood on his shirt. Morrison's shot hadn't missed entirely.
Did you hurt?
He asked. Elena shook her head, unable to speak. The man who had just saved her life was bleeding, possibly dying, and all she could think about was how wrong she had been about everything. "Good," Damien said. Then he smiled, and Elena saw pain flash across his features. "Because we need to. Get out of here now, and there's something I need to tell you about your father." He held out his hand to her, and Elena realized she was at another crossroads. She could take his hand and step into the unknown, or she could stay here in the wreckage of everything she had believed. She took his hand. As they ran from the hotel, Elena couldn't shake the feeling that her real story was just beginning. The safe house was nothing like Elena had expected. Instead of some grimy warehouse or abandoned building, Damien had brought her to a sleek penthouse apartment overlooking Elliott Bay. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the Seattle skyline, while inside, everything was minimalist elegance. Black leather furniture, stainless steel fixtures, and not a single personal photograph anywhere to be seen. Elena stood in the living room, still wearing her cocktail dress from the charity gala that felt like a lifetime ago, watching Damien tend to his gunshot wound at the kitchen island. He had stripped off his tuxedo jacket and shirt, revealing a torso marked with scars that spoke of a violent past. The fresh bullet graze along his ribs looked minor compared to some of the others. "You should go to a hospital," she said. "Hospitals ask questions," Damien replied, not looking up from the medical kit he was using. "Questions lead to police reports. Police reports lead to complications we don't need right now." Elena wrapped her arms around herself. "There is no we. I don't even know who you are." Damien finished bandaging his wound and pulled on a black t-shirt. When he turned to face her, his expression was unreadable. "My name's Damien Cross," he said. 3 years ago, I was Damien Rodriguez, and I was an FBI agent working undercover to investigate corruption in Seattle's real estate development industry." Elena felt the world tilt again. "FBI, your father was my informant." The words hit her like a physical blow. Elena sank onto the leather couch, her legs suddenly unable to support her. "That's impossible. My father would have told me." "Your father was trying to protect you." Damien moved to the windows, staring out at the city lights. He'd been suspicious about some of his business dealings for months. When he discovered that Phoenix Holdings was using substandard materials and bribing city inspectors, he came to us. Us, the FBI. We'd been building a case against Morrison, Hayes, and Kim for 2 years. Your father was the key to bringing them down. Elena's mind was reeling, but he died in a car accident. He was murdered. Damien's voice was flat, emotionless. The night before he was supposed to testify before a federal grand jury, his car went off the Aurora Bridge. The official investigation concluded that he'd fallen asleep at the wheel, but I knew better. You knew better? How? Damien turned from the window, and Elena saw something raw and broken in his eyes. "Because I was supposed to meet him that night. I was supposed to be in that car." The silence stretched between them, heavy with implications. "We're targeting you," Elena said quietly. They were targeting both of us. Your father had uncovered something bigger than just Phoenix Holdings, a network of corruption that went all the way to the mayor's office, to the governor's mansion. Billions of dollars in fraudulent development projects, all backed by dirty money from sources we're still trying to identify. Elena stood, pacing to the windows.
Oh.
Below them, the city looked peaceful, beautiful. It was hard to believe that so much darkness lurked beneath its glittering surface. If you're FBI, why didn't you arrest them tonight? Because I'm not FBI anymore. Damien's voice was bitter. After your father's death, I pushed too hard, asked too many questions. My superiors decided I was becoming a liability. They terminated my assignment and buried the case, so you disappeared. I reinvented myself, used every skill the Bureau taught me to build a new identity, a new life, made enough money to become untouchable. All so I could come back and finish what your father started. Elena turned to face him. You've been planning this for 3 years. Every day. The intensity in his voice made her shiver. Every moment since I held your father's funeral program and promised him I would get justice. You were at his funeral? In the back, you probably didn't notice me. But Elena was remembering now, a tall man in a dark suit standing apart from the other mourners. She had caught a glimpse of him as they lowered her father's casket into the ground, but when she looked again, he was gone. Why didn't you tell me any of this before tonight? Damien was quiet for a long moment. Because I didn't know if I could trust you. For all I knew, you could have been part of their operation. The words stung. You thought I was involved in my father's murder? I had to consider every possibility. His voice softened. But watching you tonight, seeing how you reacted when you learned the truth. I knew you were innocent. Elena felt tears threatening again. Richard, he was like family to me. I know. He helped them kill my father. I know. And then he helped me build my career, my entire life, all while knowing what he'd done. Damien moved closer, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. Some betrayals cut deeper than others. Wait. Elena looked up at him. This man who had materialized out of nowhere and turned her world upside down. What happens now? Now we finish it. We bring them all down. How? Morrison, Hayes, and Kim made a mistake tonight. They confessed to murder in front of witnesses. But they're going to disappear, go underground, call in favors to make this all go away. We have maybe 48 hours before they vanish completely. What can we do in 48 hours? Damien smiled, and it was predatory. More than you might think. Your father wasn't just an informant, Elena. He was brilliant. Before he died, he hid evidence, documents, recordings, financial records. Everything we need to expose the entire network. Elena's heart leaped. Where? Right. That's what we need to figure out. He left clues, but they're encoded. It didn't in places only someone who knew him well would think to look. You want me to help you find them? I need you to help me find them. You're the only person who knew your father well enough to think like he did. Elena walked to the window again, staring out at the city where her father had lived and died, where he had built his business, raised his daughter, and ultimately given his life, trying to do the right thing. If I help you, she said quietly, I become a target. They'll try to kill me. They're already trying to kill you, Damien pointed out. At least this way. You fight back. Elena was quiet for a long time, thinking about everything she had learned, everything she had lost. Her father, her sense of security, her trust in the man she had considered family. Hey, there's something else, Damien said. Something I haven't told you. Elena turned, and the expression on his face made her stomach clench. After your father died, I didn't just disappear. I stayed in Seattle. I've been watching you for 3 years, Elena, making sure you were safe. The revelation hit her like cold water watching me from a distance. I never interfered, never made contact. But I knew where you lived, where you worked, who you dated. Elena felt violated, angry, and strangely touched all at the same time. You've been stalking me. Been protecting you, without my knowledge or consent. Would you have believed me if I'd told you 3 years ago that your father was murdered? Elena knew he was right, but that didn't make it feel any less like a betrayal. What else haven't you told me? Damien hesitated, and Elena saw something flicker across his face that looked almost like pain. I know about Marcus. Elena's blood turned to ice. Marcus had been her fiancé, the man she'd planned to marry 2 years ago. He had died in a climbing accident in the Cascades, a tragedy that had nearly destroyed her. What about Marcus? It wasn't an accident. The world went silent. Lena couldn't hear the traffic outside, couldn't hear her own heartbeat. All she could hear was the sound of her life shattering all over again. What did you say? Marcus found out about us? About me watching you? He started investigating, asking questions. Got too close to the truth. Lena felt like she was falling, like the ground had disappeared beneath her feet. You're saying they killed Marcus because of me? I'm saying they killed Marcus because of me, because I failed to keep you completely separate from this. Elena's hands were shaking, her breath coming in short gasps. 2 men she had loved, both dead because of this conspiracy. Her father, her fiancé, both murdered by people she had trusted. Get away from me, she whispered. Elena, get away from me. The words came out as a scream. You knew. You knew. They killed Marcus and you never told me. Couldn't you let me grieve him thinking it was an accident? You let me blame myself for not being there, for not stopping him from going on that climb alone? Damien took a step toward her, his face stricken. I wanted to tell you. God, Elena, I wanted to tell you so many times. But I knew that if you learned the truth, you'd want revenge. And revenge would get you killed. So instead, you decided to play God with my life. I decided to keep you alive. They stood there, breathing hard, staring at each other across a chasm of pain and betrayal and desperate need. Lena wanted to hate him, wanted to run as far away from him as she could get. But she also wanted to collapse into his arms and let him carry the weight of all this grief. I can't do this, she said finally. I can't trust you. You don't have a choice, Damien replied. Like it or not, we're in this together now, Morrison. And his people won't stop until we're both dead. The only way out is through. Elena closed her eyes, trying to process everything she had learned. Her father murdered. Richard, a traitor. Marcus, another victim. And Damien, this mysterious man who had been watching her, protecting her, lying to her for 3 years, when she opened her eyes. Damien was holding out his phone. What's that? A recording I made of your father. The last conversation we had before he died. Elena's heart stopped. You have a recording of my father? He wanted to leave you a message, in case something happened to him. With trembling hands, Elena took the phone. Her father's voice filled the room, warm and familiar and heartbreaking. Elena, sweetheart, if you're hearing this, then something has gone wrong. I want you to know that everything I did to make the world a little bit safer for you. There are bad people out there, people who will hurt innocent families to protect their profits. I couldn't stand by and let that happen. Lena sank to her knees, tears streaming down her face. I've hidden evidence that will stop them, but I need you to find it. You're the smartest person I know, baby girl. You'll figure it out. Look for the place where we used to count stars. The recording ended, leaving Elena sobbing on the floor of a stranger's apartment. Mourning the father she had loved and lost and was now losing all over again. Damien knelt beside her, not touching, just being present. Where did you used to count? Stars? He asked gently. Through her tears, Elena smiled. Despite everything, despite all the pain and betrayal and loss, she smiled, because she knew exactly where her father had hidden the evidence. And tomorrow, she was going to help Damien cross. Destroy the people who had taken everything from her. The Space Needle gleamed against the night sky like a steel sentinel. Watching over Seattle's final judgment, Elena stood at the base of the iconic tower, clutching a briefcase filled with carefully crafted forgeries that had taken Damien's contacts 6 hours to create. Around her, tourists and locals moved through the Seattle Center, oblivious to the life and death drama about to unfold in their midst. Damien was positioned 100 yards away, speaking quietly into a wireless microphone that connected him to FBI agent Sarah Chen's current partner, Agent Marcus Webb. The real evidence had been uploaded to a secure server with instructions to release everything to major news outlets and federal prosecutors if Elena and Damien didn't check in within the next 2 hours. It was their insurance policy, their guarantee that even if tonight went wrong, the truth would still come to light. Elena's phone buzzed.
Ah!
A text from an unknown number. Observation deck. Come alone. Any sign of backup and Agent Chen dies? Elena looked across the plaza at Damien, knowing he had received the same message. They had anticipated this, planned for it. But that didn't make the fear gnawing at her stomach any less real. She took the elevator to the observation deck, her heart pounding with each floor that passed. When the doors opened, she stepped into a nightmare. Agent Sarah Chen was tied to a chair near the windows, her face bruised but her eyes alert and defiant. Standing behind her were Morrison, Hayes, and Kim, along with two men Elena didn't recognize who had the cold. Professional look of killers, and standing slightly apart from the group. Looking older and more broken than she had ever seen him. "Was Richard, Elena?" he said, and there was genuine pain in his voice. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry it came to this." "Are you?" Lena kept her voice steady, despite the rage building inside her. "Are you really sorry, Richard? Sorry that you got caught? Sorry that your blood money empire is crumbling?" Richard flinched as if she had slapped him. "You don't understand. I never wanted anyone to get hurt. Children are being trafficked," Elena said, stepping closer. "Innocent children, Richard. Their lives destroyed so you could afford another vacation home. It wasn't supposed to be like that." Richard's voice broke. "It started as just money laundering, just helping some foreign investors clean their cash through real estate. I didn't know about the other things until it was too late to get out," touching Morrison interrupted. "We don't have time for family therapy. Do you have the evidence?" Lena held up the briefcase. "Everything my father collected. Financial records, photographs, audio recordings. 5 years of investigation. Agent Cross. Where is he?" "Somewhere safe," Elena lied. "We'll stay away as long as you honor our agreement." And Elena felt ice form in her veins. "Oh, my dear girl." "There is no agreement." Before Elena could react, one of the gunmen stepped forward and grabbed her arm. The briefcase was yanked from her grasp and handed to Hayes, who began examining its contents. "See," Morrison continued, "we can't let any of you live. You know too much, and frankly, you've become more trouble than you're worth. Goo! Kill us. The evidence goes public," Elena said desperately. "Damien has fail-safes in place, does he?" Kim pulled out a tablet showing Elena a live video feed. Thought it showed Damien surrounded by armed men in the parking garage beneath the Space Needle. "Your boyfriend is resourceful, I'll give him that, but not resourceful enough." Elena's heart stopped. They had captured Damien. Their entire plan was falling apart. "However," Morrison said, "we're not unreasonable people. Agent Cross has offered us something very interesting in exchange for all of your lives." "What?" Elena whispered. "Himself." The observation deck's elevator. Doors opened, and Damien stepped out with his hands zip-tied behind his back. 2 more gunmen flanked him, their weapons trained on his head. But Elena could see something in his eyes, a calm determination that suggested this was part of a larger plan. "Damien," she breathed. "I'm here," he said simply. "Are you hurt?" Before Elena could answer, Morrison clapped his hands together like a pleased theater director. How touching. The 3 musketeers reunited at last. "What do you want?" Damien asked. "Justice," Morrison replied. "You've caused us considerable trouble, Agent Rodriguez. Cost us millions of dollars, disrupted carefully planned operations, turned friends against friends." He gestured toward Richard, who looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. "You see? We had a perfect system. Richard provided the legitimate business front. We provided the capital and the markets, and everyone made money. Lots of money. But then your friend Michael started asking questions." "So you killed him," Elena said. "We eliminated a problem," Hayes corrected. "Just like we eliminated the problem of his daughter's nosy fiancé. Just like we're going to eliminate the problem of one rogue federal agent and his emotionally compromised accomplice." Elena felt something snap inside her. The rage she had been carrying for 5 years. The grief over her father's death and Marcus's murder. The betrayal by the man she had considered family at all, crystallized into a single point of blazing fury. "You want to know what my father's real evidence was?" she said, her voice carrying across the observation deck. "You want to know what he found that scared you so much you had to kill him?" Morrison's eyes narrowed. What are you talking about? Lena smiled, and it was her father's smile. Brilliant and terrible and absolutely fearless. He wasn't just investigating. Your money laundering operation, who's investigating you, Thomas? Personally. What? Your daughter, Morrison? Your precious 18-year-old daughter who supposedly died in that skiing accident 3 years ago. Except she didn't die, did she? She found out what Daddy did for a living, and she tried to run, so you had her killed. The color drained from Morrison's face. That's impossible. You're lying, am I? Elena reached into her jacket pocket, ignoring the guns that immediately swung toward her. She pulled out a single photograph that had been tucked into her father's letter. Rebecca Morrison, age 18. Last seen at Seattle-Tacoma International. Airport buying a ticket to Miami under an assumed name. The photograph showed a young woman who looked exactly like Morrison, but with terrified eyes and a face Elena recognized from missing person reports. Morrison's daughter, who had supposedly died in an avalanche, but had actually been trying to escape her father's criminal empire. She was going to expose you, Elena continued. Your own daughter was going to turn you in to the FBI, so you had her murdered, just like you murdered my father, just like you murdered Marcus. Morrison's face had gone from pale to red with fury. You don't know what you're talking about. The medical examiner's report was falsified, Elena said. The body they found in the mountains wasn't your daughter. It was a Jane Doe from the morgue. Someone close enough in age and build to pass for Rebecca. Your daughter's real body was found in Elliott Bay 2 months later, but it was never identified because you made sure her dental records disappeared. Elena had no idea if any of this was true, but she had learned something important from watching Damien work. Sometimes the best weapon was the enemy's own guilt and paranoia. Morrison raised his gun, pointing it directly at Elena's head. Shut up. My father found Rebecca's real dental records. Elena pressed on. He found the medical examiner you bribed. Found the pilot who flew Rebecca's body out to the bay. He found everything, Thomas. And now the FBI has it all. He said, shut up. But Elena could see that her words were having an effect. Hayes and Kim were looking at Morrison with new understanding, realizing for the first time that their partner had killed his own child. Richard looked sick. Even the hired gunman seemed disturbed. You killed your own daughter, Elena said quietly. What kind of monster kills their own child? Morrison's finger tightened on the trigger, but before he could fire, chaos erupted. Damien, who had been slowly working his hands free from the zip ties, suddenly broke loose and threw himself at the nearest gunman. Agent Chen, despite being tied to the chair, managed to kick out and trip Hayes as he tried to bring his weapon to bear. Elena dove sideways as Morrison's shot went wide, the bullet shattering one of the observation deck's windows. The briefcase with the fake evidence went flying, scattering papers across the floor. What followed was a desperate, brutal fight for survival. Damien and the gunman crashed into the windows. Lena found herself grappling with Kim for control of his weapon. Agent Chen was trying to free herself while Hayes attempted to shoot her. Through it all, Morrison stood frozen, staring at the photograph of his daughter that had fallen to the floor. The sound of shattering glass filled the air as Damien threw one of the gunmen through a window. But there were too many of them, and Elena realized with growing horror that they were losing. That's when she heard the most beautiful sound in the world. Sirens. Lots of sirens. FBI. Everybody down. The observation deck suddenly filled with federal agents, their weapons drawn and trained on Morrison's people. Lena collapsed against the wall, gasping for breath, as Agent Webb took control of the scene. Pow! Morrison demanded as handcuffs were snapped around his wrists. Damien, bleeding from cuts on his face, but grinning, held up a small device. Audio transmitter. Everything you said for the past hour has been broadcast live to the FBI field office. Elena looked around the chaos, seeing Morrison, Hayes, and Kim being led away in handcuffs. Agent Chen was being freed from her restraints. Hurt but alive. Richard stood in the corner, looking lost and broken, waiting for his own arrest. Is it over? Elena asked. It's over, Damien confirmed. The real evidence is already being reviewed by federal prosecutors. By tomorrow morning, every major news outlet in the country will have the story. Elena should have felt triumphant. They had one. Conspiracy was exposed. Her father's killers were in custody, and justice was finally being served. Instead, she felt empty. "What happens now?" she asked. Damien stepped closer, his expression gentle. "Now you get to live your life, really live it, without looking over your shoulder or wondering who you can trust. And you? I'll probably spend the next few months testifying before grand juries and congressional committees. After that," he shrugged. "I haven't thought that far ahead." Elena looked out at the Seattle skyline, at the city where she had been born and raised, where she had loved and lost and finally found the truth about everything that mattered. "I have a confession to make," she said quietly. "What's that? Think I'm falling in love with you?" Damien was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough with emotion. "I think I fell in love with you the moment I saw you standing in that ballroom, looking like you wanted to burn the world down." Elena turned to face him, this man who had saved her life, who had helped her find the truth, who had been protecting her from the shadows for 3 years. "So what do we do about it?" "We see what happens when two broken people try to build something beautiful together." Elena smiled, and for the first time in 5 years it was a smile without shadows. 6 months later, Elena stood on the observation deck of the Space Needle again, but this time it was different. This time, she wasn't alone. Damien stood beside her, his arm around her waist, as they watched the sun set over Elliott Bay. The trials were over. Morrison, Hayes, Kim, and 17 others had been convicted on charges ranging from money laundering to human trafficking to murder. Richard had cooperated with prosecutors and received a reduced sentence. But Elena doubted she would ever see him again. The human trafficking network had been dismantled, its victims rescued, and its assets seized. The corrupt officials had been removed from office. Seattle was slowly healing from the cancer that had been growing in its heart. "Any regrets?" Damien asked. Elena thought about her father, about Marcus, about all the pain and loss that had brought her to this moment. Then she thought about the children who were safe now because of their actions, the families that would never be torn apart by Morrison's network. "No," she said finally. "No regrets." As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Elena remembered the nights she had spent here with her father, counting constellations and dreaming of heroes and adventures. She had never imagined that she would become the hero of her own story. She would find the strength to fight monsters and win, but she had learned something important in the process. Sometimes the greatest act of love is the willingness to sacrifice everything for the truth. Her father had understood that. Marcus had died for it. And in the end, it had been enough to bring down an empire built on suffering. Elena looked up at the stars, at the infinite possibilities stretching out above them, and whispered a promise to her father. "I'll keep counting, Dad. I'll keep counting. Until I run out of numbers." Damien squeezed her hand, and Elena knew that whatever came next, they would face it together. Two broken people who had found a way to heal each other, to build something beautiful from the ashes of everything they had lost. The city lights twinkled below them like earthbound stars, and Elena Vasquez was finally, truly home, the end asterisk-like. This video, if the story touched your heart, subscribe for more emotional tales. Share with someone who believes in the power of true love, and let us know in the comments. We love connecting with our global community of romance lovers.